So picture this, right? It's 3 a.m. on a Tuesday.
Okay, the graveyard shift.
Exactly. You are inside this massive manufacturing facility down in South Carolina. The air is super thick. The hum of the machinery is just deafening.
Right, classic factory floor.
Yeah. And there's this massive industrial stamp press churning out heavy steel-bearing components. But standing right next to that press, it isn't a tired human worker drinking their fourth cup of coffee.
No, it's not.
No. It is a 5'9" humanoid robot. It just reaches down, grabs a 25-pound basket of these fresh steel parts, pivots, and places it right into an industrial washer.
And it just keeps doing that.
Over and over. I mean, no brakes, no safety cages around it, no remote control operator hiding off screen with a joystick. It is just working.
It's a striking visual, honestly, especially when you think about how, I don't know, maybe just a few years ago, the only time we ever saw humanoid robots was in those highly produced viral internet videos.
Oh, man, the backflips.
Right. The metallic prototypes doing parkour in a lab. But they were tethered to power supplies, and there was always a team of really nervous engineers standing just out of frame, holding a kill switch.
Totally. I mean, it was fun to watch, but it always felt like, I don't know, science fiction, like a really neat parlor trick.
Yeah, exactly.
But grab your calendar, because today is Friday, July 3rd, 2026, and looking at the stack of financial research we have in front of us today, I think we can officially call it.
Parlor tricks are done.
They are completely over. We are staring down this massive historic inflection point. The robot race has officially graduated from, YouTube novelties directly to the factory floor, and even more wild straight onto the global stock market.
Yeah, the stakes have fundamentally shifted here because what we're looking at today, it's no longer just a collection of isolated R&D projects. We are witnessing the actual systematic commercial integration of autonomous humanoids across the entire global supply chain.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for today's deep dive, we have two massive financial dispatches driving the conversation, and they paint a pretty intense picture of a brewing battle for manufacturing dominance.
Massive battle, yeah.
On one side, we have this detailed investor presentation from a US-based company called Agility Robotics. It outlines their imminent leap onto the public market.
Right.
And on the other side, we have a hot-off-the-press financial report out of Asia showing that the Chinese robotics giant Unitree just secured approval for their own IPO.
Two massive moves at the exact same time.
Exactly. So today we are going to look at how these machines are quietly infiltrating the logistics networks that deliver, well, basically every package to your door. We'll look at how the US and China are taking radically different approaches to building them, and we'll try to figure out what it actually takes to give a machine a brain.
And looking at Agility Robotics is honestly the perfect place to ground this whole conversation, because their entire pitch to Wall Street is built around this specific concept of being, quote, made for work.
Which is very deliberate marketing.
Oh, absolutely. They are actively distancing themselves from the whole hype cycle. They don't want to talk about backflips or dancing robots. They want to talk about unglamorous, highly repetitive labor.
And the financial mechanics of how they're actually going public are fascinating. So Agility is hitting the market in the fourth quarter of this year, and they are doing it via a SPAC merger.
Right, a special purpose acquisition company.
Yeah, exactly. And for anyone who maybe hasn't tracked finance lately, a SPAC is basically a publicly traded shell company that already exists on the stock market. So a private company like Agility merges with it.
It's like an express lane to going public.
That's exactly it. You bypass the traditional super lengthy IPO roadshow. They'll be merging with Churchill Capital Core KG, trading under the ticker AGLT. But, and here's the thing, the number that totally jumps off the page in this presentation is the valuation.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's a $2.5 billion pre-money equity valuation.
Which is just a staggering number for a hardware company at this stage. I mean, building physical things is so expensive.
Right. And to justify a $2.5 billion price tag, they are pointing squarely at the real-world deployment of their current robot, which they call Digit V4.
And the numbers back it up.
They really do. They are citing over 65,000 hours of actual real-world operational time with some of the biggest blue-chip clients on Earth. We're talking Amazon, GXO, Mercado Libre, Toyota.
And that 3 a.m. South Carolina factory scenario you mentioned earlier, that isn't a hypothetical. That's a real active deployment for an industrial manufacturer called Schaeffler.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And what's crucial to understand about that specific Schaeffler deployment is the nature of the task itself. Moving 25-pound baskets of steel from a press to a washer over and over. That is the textbook definition of a dull, dirty, and dangerous job.
The 3 Ds of robotics.
Exactly. It is highly repetitive. It's physically degrading. It's the exact kind of work that human beings, frankly, just do not want to do anymore.
Yeah.
And it causes a ton of long-term physical wear and tear on the human body.
Okay, but looking closely at the hardware specs in this presentation, I have to admit I'm scratching my head just a bit.
How so?
Well, the carrying capacity for Digit V4 is listed at 35 pounds. And its runtime, before it has to basically go dark itself at an autonomous charging station, is only 4 hours.
Right.
Let's be real here. I mean, 35 pounds of lifting capacity and a 4-hour shift before it needs a nap. That sounds a bit like a really weak intern who needs a lot of coffee breaks.
That's a fair point.
Right. I mean, is that really enough to revolutionize a global factory line and command a multi-billion-dollar valuation?
Well, it's a very natural reaction to look at those specs and be skeptical. But it highlights how our traditional way of thinking about physical labor kind of betrays us when we start looking at humanoids.
What do you mean?
Well, we are culturally conditioned to focus on brute strength, right?
Yeah.
We want the robot to be a Terminator. We want it to lift a car over its head. But agility's valuation isn't based on Digit being the strongest worker on the factory floor.
Okay.
It's based on it being the safest and the most consistent. The underlying mechanism driving their whole deployment strategy is something called cooperative safety.
Okay, break that down for me. What does cooperative safety actually look like in, say, a busy warehouse?
So think about how traditional industrial robots operate. Picture those massive swinging mechanical arms that weld car frames together on an assembly line.
Yeah, they're terrifying.
Right. Because they are incredibly strong, but they're also completely blind, totally rigid, and highly dangerous. If a human walks into the path of one of those arms,
It just takes them out.
it doesn't stop. It just swings right through them. And because of that, factories literally have to spend millions of dollars building extensive physical safety cages around the robots, completely isolating them from the human workers.
So you literally have to redesign your entire factory floor just to accommodate the danger of the machine.
Exactly. But agility is flipping that model on its head. You don't redesign the factory for the robot. You build a robot that fits into a factory already designed for humans.
Which is where cooperative safety comes in.
Yes. Cooperative safety means the robot is equipped with advanced force torque sensors and is built with lightweight materials. So if a human worker accidentally bumps into Digit, or if Digit, bumps into a shelf or something, it instantly yields to that physical resistance. It just stops.
Oh, wow. It doesn't try to push through.
Right. And because of that specific engineering choice, there are no cages required. They can work literally shoulder to shoulder with humans.
Which completely explains the massive pre-orders for their next model. The presentation notes that they're releasing Digit V5 later in 2026, and they already have over $300 million in multi-year pre-orders.
That's huge.
Working alongside humans without cages is obviously the massive unlock for these logistics companies.
And to address your point about that 4-hour battery life.
Right, the weak intern.
Yeah. When you realize that these enterprise companies aren't just buying one individual robot, but they're actually buying a continuous 247 fleet of them, the short battery life totally ceases to be an issue.
Oh, because they just swap out.
Exactly. Agility manages these fleets with a cloud software platform they call Agility Arc. So when one Digit's battery runs low, the software automatically dispatches a fully charged replacement to walk over and take over the task, while the first one goes to dock and charge.
Okay, so it is just a continuous, uninterrupted flow of labor.
Yes. It's a swarm mentality. It isn't about the individual robot. It is about the total output of the fleet.
That makes a lot more sense.
And this is happening out of pure demographic necessity. The presentation actually cites a Deloitte projection, estimating that by 2033, the United States could face a shortfall of 1.9 million unfilled manufacturing jobs.
1.9 million, that's wild.
So Agility's underlying thesis isn't that they are coming in to, steal jobs or replace the human worker. They're building fleets to fill a massive growing vacuum in the labor market.
And to fill that vacuum, they have set up this massive manufacturing facility in Salem, Oregon, which they've dubbed RoboFab. I love that name.
It's very catchy.
Very catchy. The goal there is to produce up to 10,000 Digit units a year. But what really stood out to me in the sources is how heavily they lean into the fact that 75% of the robot's parts are domestically sourced right here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's not an accident.
Right.
Yeah.
They are clearly playing heavily into supply chain resilience and really appealing to U.S. industrial policy.
It's a very deliberate defensive strategic move. They want to insulate their production from any kind of global geopolitical shocks.
Okay. But if Agility is playing this carefully localized, enterprise-focused game in Oregon, what is happening on the other side of the Pacific is honestly on a completely different planet of scale.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's look at the second major piece of our puzzle today, because the news out of the Chinese market is just staggering. Unitree, which is one of China's top robotics players, just received official approval from the China Securities Regulatory Commission to list their IPO on the STAR market.
And just for some context for you listening, the STAR market is essentially China's equivalent to the NASDAQ. It's a massive exchange that is heavily focused on science and technology companies.
And the market reaction to this IPO approval was explosive. The report notes that over 30 different A-share robotics concept stocks, so these are companies supplying different parts of the robotics ecosystem, they hit their daily limit up.
Which is wild.
Explain that. What does limit up actually mean?
It means the buying frenzy was so intense that the stocks hit the absolute maximum allowable single-day price increase set by the exchange.
So they literally had to pause trading.
Yes. Trading on those specific stocks had to be temporarily halted. The entire sector just surged on the back of this Unitree news.
And when you look at Unitree's actual manufacturing output, you totally understand why the market is reacting this way. They have already produced over 11,000 units of a single humanoid model. But, okay, here is the number that completely stopped me in my tracks when I read it.
The price tag.
The price tag. They have slashed the price of their R1 humanoid model for spot sales down to 29,900 yuan, which, when you convert that to US dollars, is roughly $4,411.
It is a genuinely breathtaking price point for this level of technology.
Wait. My laptop cost almost as much as that.
I know.
Look, Agility is out here banking on massive multi-million-dollar enterprise contracts for fleets. Meanwhile, Unitree is selling a highly advanced autonomous humanoid robot for the price of a heavily used 2008 Honda Civic.
It's crazy to think about it that way.
I mean, how is that physically possible? Are they just taking a massive bleeding loss on every single unit just to flood the market? Or is there something fundamentally different about how they build these things?
Well, they aren't just taking a loss to flood the market. They are actually executing a deeply proven industrial playbook.
Okay.
To understand how a $4,400 price tag is structurally possible, we really have to look at how China approached the new energy vehicle, or the EV sector, over the last 10 years. Because they didn't just build car factories. They built the entire underlying ecosystem from the dirt up. They subsidized the lithium mines, they built the battery gigafactories, and they localized every single wire and motor.
And now they're doing the exact same thing with humanoids.
Exactly. Like a decade ago, China's robotics companies had to rely heavily on super expensive imported components from Europe or Japan. But today, the report details that everything from the delicate sensors that allow the robot to feel resistance, to the servo motors that act as its muscles, down to the reducers that control its joints.
It's all made in-house.
Almost entirely localized within China's domestic supply chain. And when you don't have to import your parts, and you're manufacturing them at a massive scale right in your own backyard, your bill of materials just plummets.
Which explains the macro scale happening here. I mean, the report states that in the first quarter of this year alone, China's total robot exports exceeded $1.7 billion. And this is the truly wild statistic. 8 out of every 10 humanoid robots produced globally right now come from China.
8 out of 10. It's just the sheer power of large-scale, low-cost manufacturing. They are aggressively pushing immense volume to drive down the per-unit cost.
Because they're aiming for massive, rapid global market penetration.
Precisely.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. We have these two vastly different hardware strategies. You've got Agility with the US-based, enterprise-focused, cooperative safety model, and then Unitree with this hyper-scaled, localized supply chain aggressive volume model.
Two very different paths.
But when you dig into the software stacks in both of these sources, you find the exact same American company sitting right in the middle of both of their brains.
Yeah, NVIDIA.
NVIDIA. Agility's presentation highlights a major investment they received from NVIDIA back in September of 2025 and a landmark safety partnership they just announced in June of 2026.
Right.
And meanwhile, the Unitree report explicitly notes that their robots are deeply integrated with the NVIDIA Isaac GR00 humanoid reference platform, and they literally physically use the NVIDIA Jetson Thor computer for their onboard processing.
It is a brilliant, totally undeniable strategic position for NVIDIA.
So, I mean, if we look at this like a gold rush, it really doesn't matter if it's the US or China striking the mother lode, because NVIDIA is the one selling the pickaxes to both sides.
That's a great way to look at it. But to understand why NVIDIA's computing hardware is so utterly essential to both of these wildly different robots, we have to talk about something called embodied AI.
Okay, yeah.
Because this is the foundational breakthrough of this entire movement. This is the difference between a pre-programmed machine and a true autonomous worker.
Right, because historically you'd program a robot with a very rigid set of physical coordinates, like go to x-axis 5, y-axis 10, close your gripper.
Exactly.
But the real world doesn't work like a spreadsheet. Things get dropped, boxes get placed an inch to the left, humans just walk right in the way.
And that chaos is exactly what embodied AI solves. We are no longer giving robots rigid coordinates. We are giving them brains that can perceive physical space, understand context, and adapt their actions in real time.
So Agility mentions they use VLA models for this.
Yes.
And that stands for Vision Language Action, right? How does that actually work in practice?
So think of it as a three-step cognitive process for the robot. First is vision. The robot's cameras take in raw pixel data of the room it's in.
Just seeing the physical world.
Right. Then second is language. It uses an underlying language model, very similar to how something like ChatGPT understands concepts, to identify what it is actually seeing. So it doesn't just see a cluster of pixels. It understands, oh, that is a heavy box, or that is a fragile glass, or that is a human being.
It gives meaning to the pixels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, action. Based on that contextual understanding, the robot's brain commands its motors to execute a physical task safely.
Which totally brings us to that wild test video Unitree recently showed off for their dubbed VLA 2.0 embodied model.
Oh, that video is incredible.
It really is. So the source details this scenario where the Unitree robot was tasked with organizing a busy conference room.
Right, but the researchers were deliberately interfering with it.
They were just bullying this robot.
Pretty much. They were pulling chairs away. Just as the robot reached for them, they were stepping directly into its path, moving items around mid-task.
And it didn't just freeze up, like it didn't flash a giant red error code and shut down.
No. And that is thanks to that massive onboard computing power, the NVIDIA Jetson Thor physically sitting inside the robot. It processed all that visual and linguistic data in milliseconds.
Wow.
It dynamically adjusted its strategy on the fly. It walked around the researchers, found the moved chair, and completed the task. The robot understood the chaos and just adapted to it.
Okay, look. The capability of the technology is undeniably incredible, but let's bring this back down to earth and look at the actual financial realities driving today's news.
The hard numbers.
Yeah, because putting a supercomputer inside a walking, balancing piece of heavy machinery, that is absolutely brutal on a balance sheet.
Oh, it is incredibly capital intensive. I mean, software businesses scale infinitely for pennies. You write the code once, and 1 million people can download it today.
Right.
But hardware businesses, they burn through millions of dollars in raw materials and factory space before the very first unit ever even ships.
Yeah, we call that being CapEx heavy, right? Capital expenditures, buying the steel, building the facilities.
Exactly.
And there is a striking parallel in the financials of our two sources today. Both Agility and Unitree are aiming to raise almost the exact same amount of money in their respective public market moves. It's right around $620 million.
It's a huge war chest.
But when you look at Unitree's Q1 2026 financials, you see the real bleeding cost of this race. Yes, their revenue grew by 68%.
It sounds good.
It does, but that is down sharply from the 332% growth they saw the previous year. And honestly, much more worryingly, their net profit plummeted by over 52%.
And the report attributes that profit drop directly to the erosion of short-term margins by massive research and development investments, alongside highly aggressive marketing costs to secure that market share.
And even Elon Musk is sounding the alarm on how difficult this transition is. The sources note he visited the Tesla Optimus production line just this week, and he really cautioned investors that mass production of humanoids is going to ramp up very slowly. Because, as he put it, it is fundamentally different from building cars.
Yeah, a car has 4 wheels and rolls. A humanoid has to constantly balance on 2 feet while carrying unpredictable weights.
So with Unitree's profits dropping by half and Agility relying heavily on pre-orders to justify a multi-billion-dollar valuation, Are we looking at an AI robotics bubble? Or is this just the messy, super expensive reality of inventing a whole new era of labor?
If we connect these financials to the broader economic consensus detailed in the reports, it looks much more like the latter. The short-term profit drops and these massive $620 million capital raises, they're pretty standard for a hyper-growth, CapEx-heavy industry trying to lay a completely new technological foundation.
You got to spend money to make money.
Exactly. And the Unitree report cites a Morgan Stanley projection that really serves as the ultimate anchor for all this investment. They expect the global robotics market to reach $25 trillion by 2050.
Wait, I'm sorry, 25 trillion.
Yes.
Let's put that in perspective for a second. The entire global auto industry right now is less than 3 trillion.
Right.
Are they seriously projecting that robotics will be nearly 10 times the size of the automotive sector? That sounds a little like Wall Street hyperbole to me.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd until you break down what the total addressable market actually is.
Okay, tell me.
The auto industry really only solves one problem: transportation.
Mm.
But humanoids, powered by embodied AI, they're designed to address literally any physical task that a human can do.
Oh, wow.
Logistics, manufacturing, agriculture, construction, eventually even elder care and domestic chores. When the market is literally every physical action on Earth, companies aren't optimizing for quarterly profit today.
No, they're optimizing for control.
They are optimizing for data collection and mass production capacity. Those $620 million raises are war chests. They need them just to survive this brutal scale-up phase.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Let's zoom out and look at the whole board. Today, July 3rd, 2026, we are watching the exact moment humanoid robots transition from expensive research novelties into a mass-manufactured, publicly traded industrial labor force.
And we are seeing two very distinct, very powerful models emerge to capture that future.
The U.S. approach and the Chinese approach.
Exactly. The U.S. approach, exemplified by agility, focuses on deep enterprise integration, cooperative safety without cages, and domestic supply chain resilience to fill very specific, high-value labor gaps.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Chinese approach, led by companies like Unitree, is leveraging aggressive supply chain localization to drive hardware costs down to just astonishing levels. They're aiming to flood the global market with volume.
And sitting right in the middle, powering both sides of this massive geopolitical manufacturing race, is the leap in embodied AI from companies like NVIDIA, finally giving these machines the ability to actually perceive, understand, and react to our messy real world.
The underlying brains of it all.
Yeah. The takeaway here is that whether you work in logistics, tech management, or even retail, the global supply chain that brings every single item into your life is fundamentally changing underneath your feet as we speak.
Which really leads to a broader implication that I don't think we've fully grappled with yet.
What's that?
Well, we've spent a lot of time today talking about these humanoids filling those 1.9 million unfilled manufacturing jobs.
Yeah.
Stepping in out of sheer demographic necessity.
Sure.
But if these machines continue to scale and humanoids become the standard, reliable 247 blue-collar worker of the 2030s, this raises an incredibly profound question. How will our definition of human purpose change when the entire concept of physical labor is completely decoupled from human effort?
Wow. Yeah, that is exactly the kind of heavy thought we need to be exploring right now. We started today talking about how satisfying it used to be just to watch a robot do a backflip on a phone screen.
Right.
But it turns out the real trick wasn't the acrobatics. The real trick was the robot quietly walking off the screen, putting on a hard hat, and clocking in for a shift. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and keep an eye on the factory floor.